We're back here on CBS Sports HQ, where the semifinals for the college football playoff are set, with 4 teams left competing for the national title. Next week, we'll see Notre Dame take on Penn State on January 9th in the Capital One Orange Bowl, followed by January 10th, the Cotton Bowl Classic between Texas and Ohio State. But if you notice here, all 5 of the conference champions and the 4 who received first-round byes, Oregon, Georgia, Boise State, Arizona State, all out of the college football playoff. So is rust versus rest something to look into? Well, the established king, as our own Chip Patterson calls him, Kirby Smart, doesn't believe that's the issue.
I look at what Vegas says, and it went kind of what Vegas said. You know what I mean? Like, at least in those 2 games, I guess ours was I don't know what it was close, but you know, 2 of those teams were better than the other teams, to be honest with you, you know, and that is what it is. That's more about the seeding process and where it is, but I'm not here to complain about anything. You know, given the opportunity, Notre Dame lost probably their best defensive player, so I don't know how that's an advantage.
Okay, so rest isn't the problem, according to Kirby Smart, but he looks at what Vegas says as you take a look at the current odds to win the national championship. Kirby doesn't believe this format really is the issue, but our own host of the Cover 3 podcast, Chip Patterson, has some strong words to say about it.
I think the playoff sucks. All 4 teams who received the bye lost and are out of the college football playoff. All 5 conference champions are out of the college football playoff. Think about the decades upon decades of college football that there have been. Here's what I'm workshopping right now. This is going to produce a champion that would not be in line with the champions of college football's history for the most part in the AP poll era. I think we're going to crown whoever was the best in the playoff. I don't think we're crowning the best team of the season. This crowning, this fast pass that you are giving to these teams to be able to jump straight to the line doesn't actually prove to give us a champion, because what we're going to have is we're going to have a champion that in all the history of college football would not be the national champion.
All right, so we're crowning the best in the playoff, not crowning the best of the season. Interesting point to raise from our own Chip Patterson. For more on this, let's go ahead and welcome in our own Richard Johnson. Rich, it is great to see you. Just going to start with if you agree with Chip here.
I disagree with my good friend and colleague, Chip Patterson, respectfully, of course. This is a playoff, and the point he's bringing up, the problem is not that this champion will not be similar to the broad history of college football champions that we've had for a century. The problem is how we picked a champion in college football over the last century plus. It was a beauty contest until the late 90s, when a bunch of dumb writer guys like me just voted on it at the end of the season. They used to even do it before the bowl games. You're supposed to play it out on the field. This is a sporting competition. It's what pretty much every other sport, at least in this country, does. So yeah, the fact that the playoff champion will be the team that got hot, I mean, that's just how playoffs work. It really is. I don't think that it was a rust factor thing when we talk about Penn State against Boise and Texas against Arizona State. Those 2 teams were double-digit favorites over their opponent. It doesn't matter if you played the game the day after the regular season or the next month. Those teams were the favorite teams. They were the better teams. They had the better athletes. Ohio State is cooking with gas right now. You gave the most talented team in the country 3 weeks off to figure themselves out. They did it against Tennessee, and then they went out and they did it in the Rose Bowl against Oregon. And then you have a Notre Dame team who played last week against Georgia. Georgia with a backup quarterback, by the way. I'm sure that Georgia appreciated the extra time to try to figure themselves out with a brand new offense, at least a retooled offense, around a backup quarterback in his first start. So I think what you have here is a lot of kind of correlation, causation, you know, all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares kind of thing. I know how it looks, but I don't really think it's that.
All right. Well, all 4 top seeds who received a first-round bye out of the college football playoff. And meanwhile, the 4 remaining head coaches in the college football playoff will all have a chance to win their first national championship. Let's focus here on Marcus Freeman and James Franklin, though, who will be squaring off in the Orange Bowl. Who do you give the edge to here?
Well, first of all, Jordan, it must be said that both of these guys are competing to be the first black coach to be on the sideline in a national championship game in the BCS or college football playoff era. I think it matters. I think it's important. I think the strides that we've made in coaching diversity, we haven't come far enough. But these 2 guys as the head of 2 power programs in the sport is just great for the sport. With that being said, I think Marcus Freeman got a massive monkey off the back last night beating Georgia. It's a Notre Dame team that had not won a major bowl game in my lifetime. I mean, they get in this spot and they get smacked by Clemson, by Alabama over the last few years when Brian Kelly was the head coach. And then you bring in Marcus Freeman and he's retooled this thing. Notre Dame, you know, they're not shooting the lights out on offense. You could tell, even with what they did yesterday. Their only touchdown drive was 1 play, 13 yards on a short field after a turnover. But they're finding ways to win, unique ways to win. What he did with the punt team coming off and then subbing the offense back in and getting Georgia to come off sides. The little things that they do, they tackle well. They're really fast on the edge. They were able to get to the perimeter on both sides of the ball. So I think it was huge for Marcus Freeman to get last night out of the way for Notre Dame. But James Franklin, this is the type of test that James Franklin Penn State teams have failed over the last few years. They've beaten the teams that they've needed to beat, and then they come up against a serious opponent and they struggle to do so. They're going to have to figure out a way to get over the line against Notre Dame because this ain't SMU and it ain't Boise State.
Yeah, that's a great point. Georgia Johnson, is always great to see.